We are doing exercise 7a, and in this video I'll be answering question 3e, which says, for y equals f of x equals 1 over x, sketch the graph of each of the following, labeling asymptotes and axis-intercepts. And we have y equals f of x plus 1. So as you can see, I've broken down this question into a few steps. We'll first find the newly transformed rule, then find the asymptotes, then the x-intercept, then the y-intercept, and then we'll give it a sketch. So I've already given y equals 1 over x a sketch, because that is what we have originally been given in the question. So we've been given y equals f of x equals 1 over x. We are then told that y equals f of x plus 1, of x plus 1. Now, as you can see up here, when I had an x here, I had an x here. Well, now that I have f of x plus 1, I am going to be putting an x plus 1 right here in my x spot. And that means what I'll be trying to sketch now is y equals 1 over x plus 1. Now, hopefully a lot of you realize that this plus 1 here is going to translate my graph 1 unit in the negative x direction. In the negative x direction, it's going to do that. So this plus 1 right here is going to translate my graph 1 in the negative x direction. So no longer do I have this, I now have this. All right. Now, if you had any trouble figuring this out, don't be afraid, just keep doing your steps and it will become clear. So let's now find our asymptotes. So we have y equals 1 over x plus 1. Now, when we're thinking about asymptotes, what we're thinking about is when is my graph ever going to be undefined? And here is quite clear that if I ever were to have a 0 in my denominator, it would be undefined. So when is that going to happen? When would my denominator be 0? Well, my denominator is x plus 1, and I'm trying to figure out when it will be 0. I do some rearranging, and I'm going to get x equals negative 1. So here it tells me that if x were to equal negative 1, I'm going to get 0 as my denominator, and thus it will be undefined. And that makes sense because minus 1 plus 1 is 0. So I come here now, and I can put in that as an asymptote. My asymptote will be x equals negative 1. And that proves what we saw before, that my graph will be translated 1 unit in the negative x direction. So this is x equals negative 1. Perfect. Let's now find my x-intercept. So to find my x-intercept, I will begin by writing down what we have, which is y equals 1 over x plus 1. I then need to let my y equal 0, 0, and then solve for x. So I'm going to times both sides by my denominator, x plus 1. X plus 1 times 0 is 0. So I'm going to get 0 equals 1, which doesn't make any sense, which tells me that there are no x-intercepts. Which makes sense when we look over here at our graph, because as you can see, my graph will be ever approaching my x-axis, but will never touch it. And that's because there's another asymptote right here, which is y equals 0. Next, we need to figure out what my y-intercept will be. So we'll begin by writing out our rule, y equals 1 over x plus 1. And to find my y-intercept, I let my x equal 0. So I get my x and I let it equal to 0. I will then go y equals 1 over 0 plus 1 is 1, which means y will equal 1. So my y-intercept will be y equals 1, which is right here. So this will be 0, 1. So I found my y-intercept, I found that there are no x-intercepts, I found my asymptote, and I've drawn my graph. Hopefully this video was helpful in answering question 3e of exercise 7a.